But like, look, like the Daily Mail, like it spent like 300,000 words shrieking about this campaign over the last few weeks. Like, we're gonna make fun of you.
Yeah.
Like, calm down. Like, go cry in your museum full of stolen stuff if you're sad about it, guys. Hello and welcome to the Plugged In Podcast, a weekly news show from InsideEVs about the future of transportation. I'm Patrick George, editor-in-chief of InsideEVs.
And I'm Tim Levin, senior reporter at InsideEVs. This week, we're talking about Jaguar's big pink comeback, the dumpster fire raging at one of Europe's biggest car companies, and California Governor Gavin Newsom's plan to stick it to Donald Trump and Elon Musk.
This episode of InsideEVs Plugged In Podcast is brought to you by E-Range EV Tires. E-Range EV tires are specifically engineered for electric vehicles. Using an advanced manufacturing process called liquid phase mixing, E-Range EV's EcoPoint 3 technology creates a tire with low rolling resistance and longer range, while offering low levels of wear and high grip. All this while staying affordable. Go to erangetires.com. That's ERANGE tires.com to find your EV's next set of tires.
Tim, we did it, buddy. We're here, man. We're rocking and rolling. We promised the audience that the podcast would come back by November, and here it is. It's in their hands, December 6th, 2024. But which is, that's also totally November. If you look at a calendar or your watch or something, it's the same.
Yeah, no, it's November somewhere. So
yeah,
we basically did it.
Is that how it? I think that's how the calendar works. Yeah, no, it's look, for anyone following along, it's definitely not like we punted this down the road for months, then ran into Thanksgiving, then tried to rush it out before Christmas and the New Year. This was the plan all along, and we're going with it. So super excited to be here, and we definitely are kicking this off with plenty to talk about. But before we get into this week's news stories, I want to elaborate a little bit about what you can expect from this podcast. And like InsideEVs itself these days, we don't just cover cars or electric cars. This is about the high-tech transformation of the entire auto industry and how we're going to get around someday. When we talk about hybrid cars, China, and the battery boom in America, software, autonomous vehicles, what's next, what's not working, the future of everything, really.
Yeah, and it won't just be us all the time either. We're going to have guests on from the InsideEVs staff. We're going to have auto industry executives. We're going to have smart analysts to help us break down the news. It's going to be really fun. We're super excited about this.
And with that, shall we get to our first story, Tim?
Yeah, let's do it. So the Jaguar saga continues. On Monday night in Miami, Jaguar unveiled the Type 00, a chunky, colorful concept car that previews a $120,000 EV coming in 2026. I think we can come back to the car itself in a couple minutes because I know we both have thoughts about that. But first, what's going on here, Patrick? Why are we talking about a Jaguar concept car? What's the backstory?
Yeah, I feel like if you didn't hear about this in the last couple of weeks, you were hiding under a rock. But
yeah,
we've sort of known for months that Jaguar was going to unveil a new electric vehicle concept in December in Miami. A couple weeks ahead of that, they unveiled the branding and ad campaign for this new EV, and it really just blew everyone's minds, and not necessarily in a good way.
Yeah,
it looked like sort of a like a high dollar fashion shoot, like lots of colors and lots of models of different skin tones and body types, and no cars whatsoever.
Yeah.
And I think it's fair to say that ad campaign, some folks are like, okay, cool, you're going for this high fashion, high dollar vibe now, but it really landed with a thud in a lot of other areas, including from traditional car enthusiasts who love Jaguar and were kind of like, okay, where's the car? And then I think it also got really ugly too, because a lot of the models that they used in this debut campaign were people of color, and so immediately this became this very unfortunate Jaguar goes woke Budweiser 2.0 thing. Which I thought was really just sad. Bud Light, sorry, 2.0 thing, which I thought was really sad and unfair. I don't like the term woke personally, because I think it's shorthand for just everything that the cable news tells you to hate as opposed to anything specific. But this past week, in showing off the actual car, Jaguar kind of attempted to bounce back from that a lot. And I don't know, man, you saw that car. Like, what did you think of it?
I mean, it's growing on me. It's growing on me for sure. Like, I think it has these really sharp, for lack of a better word, kind of like Cybertruck-esque angles. It's like shiny and pink, and there's a blue one. It's a really out there looking car, and I think if they can make that, like, maybe people will buy it. It's definitely going to be something different. But I mean, say what you will about the rebranding or the car, like, there's no denying that Jaguar needs to do something different here. What they've been doing hasn't been working, and I have some numbers to back that up. I mean, Jaguar's sales basically have been tanking, both in the U.S. and globally. They've been tanking for years. They sold 8,300 cars in the U.S. last year, down 80%, a full 80% from 2017, and also falling every single year since 2019. Worldwide, last year it sold 64,000 cars, which is about a third of its peak in 2018. So they've just never really been a major competitor to Mercedes or BMW. And like, this rebranding thing was weird, and it looked like the Hunger Games, and it put a lot of people off. but like I don't see anybody else lining up to like buy Jaguars or lining up to, tell them how they should run their business better. Like, they're trying something new because they need to, right? So yeah.
I think it helps to talk about how we got here too. And like, I remember covering this like 10 plus years ago at Jalopnik, which is like at the start of the 2010s. Jaguar Land Rover under newish ownership by India's Tata Group. They were like, yeah, like you said, Sam, like we're going to take shots at BMW and Mercedes. We're going to become this big mainstream luxury brand with lots of like sporty sedans and crossovers and a sports car.
Yeah.
And it didn't work. Like, those are two really big targets to aim for. Everyone tries to take down BMW or Mercedes. It never works out. Like, it was a miracle that Lexus was able to do that, and that was 30 years ago. It was even more of a miracle that like Tesla was able to pull that off. But they came out with some really rad cars, like internal combustion cars 10 years ago. And like, I think a good example of what happened to this brand is the F-Type, which came out in 2013 and was immediately one of the best and most fun sports cars on the market. And like, I feel kind of bad saying this on the InsideEVs podcast, but like, if anyone ever asks, if anyone ever offers you an afternoon in a Jaguar F-Type, like, you say yes. Just go up, because it's one of the most awesome sports cars that's, of modern times. It goes hard in every sense of that phrase. And then they come out with it and they did nothing with it. And it's still for sale ostensibly, but like, it's just totally irrelevant and languished. Then you have the I-Pace, like, really groundbreaking car, the electric I-Pace. And like that actually came out. It was a Tesla Model 3 competitor, not a Model Y. It beat the Model Y to market.
Yeah, it came out in 2018, which was like, for EV stuff, that was pretty early for the mainstream or for the like legacy brands. Jaguar had this big head start with the I-Pace. Those are all the Waymo cars that you see, like the swoopy white ones. And they just kind of did nothing with that lead, right?
Yeah, totally. It was like, that car had great specs for its time, but like today, like the range and the charging speeds on an I-Pace are, they're totally outclassed by newer stuff. So if they had kept that going, like, I think it could have been really something. But by, the end of the decade, none of these big plans worked out. Sales are tanking. They're dealing with the aftermath of Brexit, which made their business a lot harder to operate. They dealt with COVID, and they dealt with a new CEO coming in who like immediately decided to kill off another EV project that cost them $650 million when it was like 90% ready to go. And then he left or got fired a year after that, which is a great way to be a CEO. You just come in for a couple of years, kill some project that leaves the company in a lurch, and then,
golden parachute.
Golden parachute your way out, one assumes. So yeah, like to your earlier point, man, it's like Jaguar had to do something big. And I think that like, all the people mad about this car, mad about this ad campaign, like, I think their perceptions of Jaguar are years or decades even out of date. You've seen a lot of just, especially English people, British people this week, just screaming, oh, I don't like the new Jaguar, mate. I used to pick up lots of birds in mine.
I did not expect an accent rendition.
It's a bad one, I know, but like, look, like the Daily Mail, like it spent like 300,000 words shrieking about this campaign over the last few weeks. Like, we're gonna make fun of you.
Yeah,
Like calm down. Like go cry in your museum full of stolen stuff if you're sad about it, guys. But like they need to do something bold, and like I don't know if this is gonna work for Jaguar, but I like the way the car looks. I like the crazy stuff they're trying with it. It does not have a rear window at all, but like it's something. You got to swing for the fences, for sometimes that works.
Yeah, and like for some more background on what Jaguar's trying to do here, they basically decided like we're not gonna try to compete with Mercedes and BMW anymore. Those brands sell like 2 million cars a year. We obviously can't hang. So they're basically going upmarket and going EV only. And they're saying starting in, with this car, with this 4-door GT that this concept car is previewing, we're going to be EV only. We're going to go upmarket. So it's going to be like 6 figures plus. And we're going to be competing kind of more with like Bentley-ish than BMW or Mercedes. And they're going to they're going to aim for way lower volumes, way higher prices, and be this kind of like ultra luxury option. And I don't know, maybe it could work.
Too,
yeah, Rolls-Royce too.
Yeah.
Right. But not quite as like pricey as Bentley or Rolls-Royce. So that's kind of the plan here. We'll have to see if it pans out.
Yeah, it's a clever idea. Just like I kind of wonder also, like, and I kind of like that this campaign like pissed off so many people that I hate. But again, I like the car, but I sort of wonder, is this plan going to work in 2025, 26 and beyond? Like this might have worked 10 years ago when your targets really were Rolls-Royce or Bentley or whatever. But it's like now, like all of these European car companies are dealing with just intense competition from China, which we're going to talk about on this episode. We've been covering all year at InsideEVs. And it's like, this isn't really your problem anymore. It's what like Bentley and Rolls are doing. It's like Xpeng and NIO and BYD and whatever other,
that's true,
brands they can bring to market, including at the upper end of things. And it's like, I hope the Brits are really come at this like both barrels, because like this is getting more intense than ever. And anyone will tell you, like, if they don't pull this off, like that's probably it for this brand. And I mean, well, then the only thing it'll have is history to talk about.
Yeah, no, that's a great point, because like the Chinese brands have been coming into Europe hard, and I don't think we've really seen like super high end ones yet, just because people have allegiances. People want, an Audi or a Bentley or whatever. And like, it's going to take a lot for them to spend like $100,000 plus on a Chinese car, but who knows? That's definitely coming. So we'll have to see if Jaguar can stand up against that. Yeah.
Tim, you pointed out too, like, let's also just like, even if we're trying to be optimistic and supportive, like this is an insane project.
Yeah.
It's really, it's comically over the top in good ways and bad. But like you mentioned, like it was one of the most bizarre press releases you've ever read. Do you want to favor us with an excerpt?
Yeah, it was ridiculous. I mean, I'm not going to say that this rebrand was, obviously all the criticism I think was misplaced, but this was all really weird. The original ad had like all these cryptic phrases, copy nothing, delete ordinary. It was weird. And the press release lived up to that too. Here's a little bit. A soothing travertine stone functions as a plinth, supporting the floating seats and central spine. And I was like, what? First of all, I'm embarrassed to say I did have to Google what a plinth is. But this Jaguar has one. It has a stone. It has stone in the middle of it. So
it has a plinth, folks. What more do you want? Okay.
Yeah.
Everyone who didn't buy a diesel E-Pace 10 years ago, you have a plinth now. Like, stop complaining.
Yeah, I don't think I will never be in the tax bracket to afford a plinth, I think, anywhere, much less like inside of my car. So if they can pull that off, I think they'll have the Chinese beat for sure.
It goes on though, right? There's more that you highlighted.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, I love reading this out loud.
It was ridiculous. Yeah, and for those watching on YouTube, like we'll have photos accompanying this because you cannot understand really what this is just from the words. But this is another part. An exquisitely engineered power door on the body side contains 3 totems of natural materials: brass, travertine, and alabaster. And it's like there's this little door, kind of where you'd think a charging port would be. Like I saw the photo. There's like this little hatch opens up on the side of the car. And there's like, I don't know, something in it. You can't tell what it is. But basically, in this concept, you can like take out one of these totems and place it inside your vehicle, and it changes the sensory experience of, sitting in this car. It's bizarre. It's all bizarre stuff. But like, this is what car companies do when they come out with concepts. They make up a bunch of words, and they never deliver on it. But like, it's fun to read.
I love and really enjoy covering the global auto industry, but like, this reminds me of a lot of like auto show debuts I've been to, where they use this really over the top, crazy, high minded stuff, and I'm just like, how the hell is this my life? Like, what am I doing here? I want to go to a bar instead. Like,
but it's nice. It's nice that this isn't like a lot of the concepts that we see are like autonomous kind of pods or like futuristic kind of things like that, and this is like, it's like a cool, huge luxury grand touring car with like a crazy design and stone on the interior. Like, it's something that you don't see very often, which is fun.
Yeah, I when I watched the debut video, and I was seeing like the rear window and how that moves around. I was like, holy crap, this is wild. Like, I hope some of that stuff works out. I don't know if you put the totem on the plinth or if the totem and the plinth are separate, but I for one look forward to finding it.
Yeah, I think if you put the totem on the plinth, the whole car explodes. So you cannot do that. They don't recommend it.
Indeed. Well, that's enough of Jaguar for now. What's next with that brand is we're hopefully going to see the production version of this concept in the coming months or years. Production set to start 2026 in the United Kingdom. We'll see what happens. But there are also more models coming, as you mentioned, like a GT car, a crossover, because they got to pay the bills somehow. So let's hope they pull it off.
Yeah.
I like weird stuff, and I like big, bold experiments. So why the heck?
Yeah, and not to like belabor it either, but just last thing I'll say is like this video that got all this flack online, like it kind of worked in a sense that, I feel bad for all these designers and the Jaguar, nice people at Jaguar who spent time putting this together and got it kind of dragged through the mud of the internet. But like, we wouldn't be talking about Jaguar. Nobody would be talking about this Jaguar concept or what they're planning or anything if they hadn't gone so hard on this. So, in a way it worked out. Like people are actually going to be staying tuned and seeing what comes out, in the next couple of years, and like maybe even buy it just because this kind of caused so much news, right?
Yeah. And the common theme here with a lot of what we're going to talk about, a lot of what we cover on Inside EVs is survival, because this industry is facing this massive transformation, this transition to electrified power. Not all these brands are going to survive. Not all of their old tactics are working. They have this immense threat in the form of China, both in China and in Europe and other markets. And I think one of the companies that's had one of the worst years we've seen in a while is Stellantis, unfortunately, which if you don't know what that name is, a few people still do. It's that is the parent company of, let me check my notes here. What is it? It's 14 different brands, including Jeep, Dodge, Ram in the United States, Chrysler, and Peugeot, Citroen, Alfa Romeo, Fiat, and 18 others that I can't recall off the top of my head. But they've had a pretty disastrous year. Sales are collapsing, and unexpectedly, their CEO, Carlos Tavares, stepped down over the weekend, and he was due to retire in 2026 anyway. But he's like, you know what? F this, I'm out, and just like,
well,
he like left,
the Stellantis, more likely the Stellantis board was like, actually, you don't have till 2026, like pack your bags.
Yeah,
right.
Pack your bags, like John Elkann, just put him in the back of an old Fiat, dropped him at the Italy-Swiss border. It was like don't let me see you around here again, and that was the end of him. But like, Tim, you have some data here on how Stellantis has been performing this year, and it's equally grim, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, so like the whole idea was Stellantis was made out of this big merger between Fiat Chrysler and the European PSA group. And the idea was like, we'll put all these brands together, we'll save a bunch of money, by sharing costs and stuff. And that kind of worked for a while. But then this year it has really been kind of going downhill. So in Q3, Stellantis reported a 20% drop in vehicle sales globally and a 27% drop in revenue year over year, which is not something, that's not what you want.
Oof.
Yeah.
Not what you want. You want the numbers to go up and not down in business.
Yeah. And
up and not down.
I'll try to remember that.
Except for cost, those have to go down, but all the other numbers up. And that's how you do business. And that's what Stellantis is not doing.
Yeah. And so like, things are bad when both the United Auto Workers Union and the Stellantis dealers have both been like publicly complaining about the direction Stellantis is going, and particularly about the CEO's leadership. So it looked like he was on his way out already. They announced a couple of months ago that he was gonna not stay past the end of his like appointment in 2026, and then a couple of months later, just now, they were like, all right, it's time to go. But yeah, I mean, its strategy in the U.S. has been particularly like that's kind of what we're most familiar with, and it's pretty obvious that they have not been investing enough in their products. Like Chrysler, complete shell of what it once was, right? Chrysler has one model, the Pacifica minivan.
Depressingly so, yeah.
Yeah. Dodge discontinued the gas-powered Charger and Challenger like a little bit too soon, probably. Those aren't on the market right now. Dodge isn't selling gas-powered Chargers and Challengers, which is kind of a misstep. Jeep, they tried to do this upmarket thing, tried to make a sub-brand Wagoneer that's like, sells these six-figure kind of big SUVs. That didn't really work. And then you have Fiat and Alfa Romeo, which are basically, completely irrelevant, right, in the United States. So they're in a really tough spot.
If you've ever been to like a car dealership and you've wondered why a Jeep Gladiator truck is $75,000 or a Jeep Grand Wagoneer is $110,000, like that's Carlos Tavares, and that's modern Stellantis, and that's the problem, is that just post-COVID, their prices went nuts, and I think it's fair to say that like we're seeing a lot of progress from them on the electrification front. Like they have new electric platforms coming out, like STLA Large and Medium, they call them, and they seem really promising, actually. Like I think that they're kind of late to the EV game and the electrified game, but like they have some cool stuff coming, but it's a little, too little too late, I guess you'd say. Just at the end of the day, it's just not stuff people are buying because they can't afford them. And to your point about Alpha, I mean, it's almost the same thing as Jag. Like interestingly, around the same time, like 10 years ago, Alpha was also like, oh yeah, we're also going to fight Mercedes and BMW, all these luxury cars. And it went even more poorly. And now like Fiat and Alpha dealers in America are like some of the saddest people in this country.
Yeah, well, No, every once in a while, there'll be a story that's like Fiat sold fewer cars this quarter than there are Fiat dealerships in America, right? There are more Fiat dealerships than they sold cars in this period. And it's like, oof, that is not a good place to be.
It is. It's sad. It's like, again, they're doing interesting stuff. And I think like the Fiat 500e is a great example, but it's like, I'm kind of baffled as to why that's sold in America. I mean, it's this, fairly low range, very cool looking EV, but it's like $35,000. And we all know you get a way better deal with more size, more room, more range, more power with almost anything else. So
yeah,
it just kind of, you look at all these brands and like, okay, who's doing well? Who's winning here? What's the model? What do we base this off of? How do we move forward in a way that's not gonna suck? So I don't know where you even start with this company.
Yeah. I mean, investing in more products, I guess.
Yeah, and probably going on an apology tour with your dealers, your suppliers, your employees in America. That's like what we hear too. Tim and I talk to people in the auto industry at all levels. Tips at InsideEVs.com if you ever want to send us something that that we should know about that your boss doesn't wish that you told us about. We talked to all kinds of people, and like morale is terrible at Stellantis in the United States. They've had tons of layoffs. From everything we've heard is that all these 14 different brands, they don't really work all that well together. They don't like each other. There's not really like a cohesive culture in this company that's leading to success. Like it's this kind of patchwork system. It was sort of driven by one guy and like his sort of politics of resentment a little bit. And now it's like, okay, now what do we do? And I'm just really glad that's not my problem. I'm not going to be the CEO of Stellantis.
Yeah.
They offered it to me, but I was like, nah, I'm good. I'm gonna stick with InsideEVs.
I'm glad. And I mean, to go back for a sec, like, just because I know people are going to be curious about like Stellantis EV kind of strategy specifically, like, the one that they have on sale right now, I believe, is the Fiat 500e, like you said, which is a tiny city car that Americans don't really want. It's overpriced kind of for the range that you get. It's just not really something that people want here. Dodge, there's going to be the Dodge Charger is coming like imminently, which is a muscle car that's an electric car that is kind of has a dubious, market for it. We'll have to see how that goes.
Yeah.
But
I like that thing. I think the specs are great. That thing, it looks gorgeous. I just, like you said, I think that's a really tough crowd to win over, like objectively, even as like pro EV people like we are.
Yeah.
Like, you're selling electric cars to like muscle cars, like Hemi guys, the Mopar bros, and like that, the Brotherhood of Muscles, they call themselves. Like, that's tough. That is a really hard proposition. Yeah.
Yeah. And
You said cringe?
I think you said that.
Yeah.
No. So I think the one really interesting thing coming from them, and you mentioned these electric platforms, is that they're kind of pioneering in extended range EVs, which we call EREVs. The Ram 1500 Ram Charger is coming next year. And that is a big Ram truck with a battery, but also a gas generator that makes it go farther. It means that you can tow things, you can do all the things that truck people want to do without worrying that you're going to run out of range, which has kind of been one of the big things that's been hampering trucks like the F-150 Lightning or the Rivian R1T or the Chevy Silverado EV. Like, it turns out that truck people are a really hard sell for EVs. And Stellantis came out, they announced this Ram truck with the range extender, and it was like, oh, that's actually a really good idea. Like, that hasn't happened for a while. There used to be, similar kind of vehicles in the market, but not in a long time. And now you're starting to see that catch on. Like, Hyundai is going to do it. I think Ford is also working on something like that. So it's interesting because in some ways they're really falling behind, and in some ways they're kind of really ahead of the curve.
Yeah, there are a lot of us that think that the EREV is like the near-term future of internal combustion. Mm-hmm. Like you said, that car's really cool. V6 engine, it does not drive the wheels of that truck at all. Right. It just recharges the battery. So yeah, it seems like you're getting the best of both worlds. I have to assume that in terms of fuel economy and emissions, it's going to be way less than even like a hybrid truck would be. So like, yeah, they have some big deal stuff coming out in a make or break year with no CEO. Like, that's a little scary. So, how they're going to pull it off, I don't know. But I mean, you point out earlier, like, Stellantis is one part of like the challenges we're seeing in this business right now, especially in Europe. But it's not just them in that comment. You want to expand on that a bit?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, the European auto industry generally is kind of really suffering right now. It obviously depends, like, automaker to automaker, but Stellantis is struggling. Volkswagen, which is the other really big auto group in Europe, is struggling. It's planning to close plants in Germany for the first time in its history. It has its union just like rioting about this. BMW and Mercedes are struggling too. It's a tough time for the whole industry. A lot of it's problems with China. So there are Chinese automakers coming to Europe and stealing market share from these European brands. The European brands are also being pushed out of China because Chinese customers are increasingly favoring these like homegrown Chinese brands.
So they don't need our help anymore to make great cars. Like they like learned from the West and the Japanese how to make amazing cars, and like they've run with it, and they're like, thanks for playing, but we'll help you pack your bags.
Yeah, no, exactly. And just to illustrate that, like, so right now in Europe, recent stats say Chinese cars make up 20% of the EVs sold in Europe, a whole fifth of the EVs sold in Europe, and they were basically non-existent a few years ago. Wow. And then if you go to China, foreign brands made up 2/3 of the Chinese car market in 2020. Now they're 1/3. So they've just shed like 30-something% market share in just the span of a few years. So yeah, it's not hard to see why these companies are really struggling.
Yeah, I don't know what the answer is, man. For now, and about it's not my problem. I only write about these things as they happen. But for now, tariffs and the geopolitical situation, America keep the Chinese out of this country. When he was campaigning, President-elect now Trump said, if the Chinese are going to do business, they may as well put factories in America and build their cars here and sell them here. I'm sure that when the CEOs of like Ford and GM heard that, they were like driving around alone at night, listening to the National and being sad.
Yeah.
Because like that's a threat that they don't want to deal with. We tend to think that like those cars from China will show up here at some point. Like it's maybe the next decade, it's inevitable. But for now, you know, what's happening in Europe is either a preview of what could happen in America, or we can like learn from it and head it off. So I don't know. Speaking of America, let's head out to your home state, Tim, or at least where you live these days.
Yeah, my adopted home state.
How's the weather out in California? Let me guess. Nice, right?
It's kind of always nice. It's pretty awesome.
It's always nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hate you guys. I drove an EV home in 17-degree weather last night. My wife was like, "We have enough range to get home, right?" Oh yeah. It's totally normal for me to turn off the heater and the radio and the headlights and to put it in neutral and just start praying out loud. You know, so I'm glad you're enjoying your nice weather in December.
Yeah, it's funny. I remember one of the first times that I reviewed an EV, I was like, should I turn off the headlights? Like I only have like 8% battery left. And I don't think that is a big draw on the battery, but it is something that you always think of. You're like, I don't know if I'm going to get there. Or like, yeah, I did draft very close to the back of a truck. That was what I decided to do instead.
Yeah, for the record, the headlights don't do anything.
No.
We were both joking, and don't drive with your headlights off at night.
And don't drive too close to trucks either, to be honest.
Yeah, but it sounds like, you know, also speaking of Trump, you know, where there's a lot of questions about whether the EV tax credit is even going to survive in the next few years. But sounds like, you know, Governor Gavin Newsom has his own ideas about that out in California. You want to elaborate, Tim?
Yeah, for sure. So there's been reporting recently from Reuters, got a hat tip to Reuters, that
oh yeah,
I mean, this just set off an absolute what do I want to say?
Firestorm, perhaps?
Yeah, sure. So basically there's been reporting from Reuters that Donald Trump's transition team is planning to get rid of the EV tax credit, the $7,500 rebate that you can get if you buy a new electric or plug-in hybrid car in the U.S. And we don't know if that's actually going to happen, but Governor Gavin Newsom of California plans to basically fill the gap if that does happen. He has said that California has said that they're going to instate a rebate of their own that would fill that gap. The one kind of interesting part of it, that's great on its own, because obviously who doesn't want a rebate on an electric car? Great for the industry.
Or any new car, really.
Yeah, or any new car, sure. But, you know, the EV industry needs it. But the one wrinkle there that kind of set things off online was that Tesla might be excluded from that rebate because because they're considering restrictions around market share, and obviously Tesla has got a really big market share. So I mean, what do you think about that, Patrick?
Man, I think this is a funny one. It's hard to tell how serious that threat is. It could just be a shot across the bow at Elon Musk, who kind of has this like love-hate relationship with California and Newsom in particular. You know, Tesla obviously got its start in California. Its first factory is in Fremont. They still make cars there.
Mm-hmm.
They left California amid a dispute over COVID lockdowns. You know, Elon's politics have totally sort of skewed the other direction these days, but they had kind of a make nice like a year or two ago, like, yeah, we're always going to have our tech center and our factory in California. So there's a lot of tit for tat between those two. And like, I can't tell if Newsom was serious about what he says about market share by excluding Tesla from these credits, or if he wanted to take a shot at Elon Musk, who is now like best friends with Donald Trump and maybe runs the United States government, which is very exciting for everyone involved. I actually don't know, man. Like, I kind of don't agree with Newsom here. Like, I think, let's go back to why are we doing EVs in the first place? What's the goal here? And it's if this technology exists to create cleaner cars and to help fix air pollution, then just give the tax credits to everybody. Hell, maybe let in the Chinese makers while you're at it, just because like people driving cleaner cars is a net positive. But if you're doing it just for protectionist reasons, market share to help some companies but not others, I don't know, that makes a little bit less sense. That's more of like the nakedly capitalistic approach. don't know what his intention is. I mean, you may not like Newsom's politics if you're listening to this, but like, he's not stupid. Like, let's be clear. Like, he's very shrewd. He very clearly has designs for higher office.
Yeah.
So like, I don't think he just like shot from the hip on this one, but whether it happens or not, I don't know. But I think if you're going to do an EV tax credit scheme, just let people buy Teslas. I mean, like, hell, the way that Tesla's like market share has been slipping lately anyway, they could probably use the help. Yeah. So
yeah, this is going to be, it's one of the rare instances probably when you're going to like agree with Elon Musk, who's just like generally, disagreeable. Yeah. He responded to this Bloomberg story that kind of broke that news. And he said, even though Tesla is the only company who manufactures their EVs in California, this is insane. So, you guys have a point. I'm not sure. I'm also not sure about this. I'm leaning the other way. I think it's okay to have a market share cap. Like, if you look back at how the EV tax credit was before the Inflation Reduction Act kind of changed it, it had these sales caps in it, right? So a manufacturer, the credits started phasing out after a manufacturer sold 200,000 or more EVs cumulatively. So Tesla and GM were the only ones that capped out under that early program. But like, I don't know. I think you could look at it both ways. Like, these incentives are there to get people to drive clean cars, but they're also there to seed this industry and have it like stand on its own eventually. And for that to happen, you do need to create like a real market with competition in it. And you don't want to just subsidize Tesla until it has, and just keep it at, 50 or 60% market share. Like, you do want these other brands that are just scraping by right now to like actually, gain some significant part of the market. I mean,
yeah. And there are people that'll throw up their hands and get mad here because they're like, we shouldn't be subsidizing the car industry like at all. And like, that's cute, but also like, China has subsidized the hell out of its EV industry.
And they're
South
winning.
Korea's done the same, and they're winning.
Yeah.
South Korea's done the same. They're way ahead too. The Japanese government subsidized the hell out of its auto industry after World War II for 20 years. We've done that here. We artificially keep gas cheap. We built highways. We allowed a pivot away from public transit in most major cities. Like, the car market has never been just up to the hand of the free market in America, ever. And like, unless it wants to be made just totally irrelevant by what's coming, like, it is going to need a little bit of help to protect a $3 trillion industry that employs so many people in this country and beyond. So yeah, I definitely see your point too.
Yeah. I mean, and just to put some numbers to it, like, Tesla's the dominant EV seller in America, with almost 50% market share. It's even more dominant in California, which is the biggest market for EVs, biggest car market in America, and the biggest market for EVs. So through the first 3 quarters this year, 22% of cars sold in California were EVs, and almost 55% of those were Teslas. So like, is it fair for Newsom to argue that Tesla doesn't really need any more help? I think so. The next one is Hyundai Motor Group. So Hyundai, Kia, and Genesis with a combined 9.7%. And everybody else is kind of fighting for scraps at like, 5%, 6%, 2%, whatever. So like, competition is good ultimately. So I think if a policy can like help some of these other brands, pick themselves up, that's not necessarily a bad thing. And the other thing I would say is like, I think keep an eye on California over the next 4 years. This is going to be like a flashpoint where a lot of the Trump sort of climate policy rollbacks are going to happen. He's most likely, he said that he's going to try to revoke California's ability to create its own more stringent fuel emission standards, which is something that would be a big deal because, a lot of other states also adopt those standards. That's something that's been pushing EVs forward.
I think 16, I want to say, off the top of my head.
It's something like that. It's in the teens.
Yeah, it's a lot. And so like, if you're an automaker, you're like, look at how many cars get sold in America's like biggest single like car market state.
Yeah.
Plus, 15 others. Like, you're going to follow those rules.
It's a third. Yeah. It's about a third of the car market abides by these rules.
Wow.
And so, yeah, that's part of the when people talk about California wanting to ban sales of gas cars by 2035. That is part of this, California specific policy framework. And Trump has said he wants to, roll that back. And so we're going to have to keep an eye on what happens in California.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I'm always amazed that, like, every time I go to California for work or for fun, it's like there are 3 cars that exist in the state of California. It's like some kind of Tesla, specifically, like a 20-year-old Prius that's still running great, or like this beautiful, pristine, absolutely rust-free, like 1950s Porsche race car that was also somehow owned by Steve McQueen. And like those are the 3 kinds of cars that are in California. Yeah, and you pick one when you land at the airport, and that's how that state works.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, I don't know if it's like a confirmation bias or what. It's not confirmation bias. One of the biases, but lately, like every other car I see is a BMW i3, which I just know there like aren't that many of them, but apparently they all exist in like a 6-block radius of my home in Northern California. So, yeah. EVs, there are a lot of them here.
For the LA Auto Show, I remember just seeing the Toyota BZ4X everywhere. And like, it had a much better sales year in America this year, 2024. But last year, I was like, oh, that's where all of them went. It's just, they just got them all out here. So, it's kind of cool to see. Like, it's like that and like South Korea, the places I've been in my life. It's like, this is what an electric future and a hybrid future kind of looks like. And, it's because of those rules you mentioned, and we'll see if they keep going, All right, cool. Well, this has been a really great and illuminating inaugural episode. I know that I'm a better person for having done it. I know you are too, Tim. Our listeners are.
Oh, yes.
We're going to cap this off with a new feature that we're tentatively and with much disagreement calling plus and minus. It's like a battery. Yeah, we haven't figured out a better name for it, but we might. But in this feature, what we're trying to do is end every episode talking about who's up and who's down, who are the winners, who are the losers in this week of news in the auto industry transformation. And Tim, you first, my man.
Sure. Yeah. So I'll start with my plus. Try not to fall asleep during this one, folks, because it is a little bit wonky, but it is really important. So basically, we've learned today on Wednesday that there's going to be a universal plug-in charge protocol coming next year, which basically means that a bunch of automakers, the Biden administration, the SAE, which kind of makes these standards around cars, has been working on a way to basically have it so that every car charges kind of like a Tesla does, right? Where you can
plug it in, and you don't have to mess with apps or credit cards. Plug it in, and then your money gets taken out of whatever, and you're getting juiced up.
Plug it in, it starts charging, you pay at the end, that's it. And if anybody who's familiar with like driving electric cars knows that's very much not how it works most of the time now. Like there are some cars that use plug and charge. Teslas are really good at that kind of thing. But in general, like you pull up, you have to like tap your card or you have to open an app. It's just like it's a pain in the ass, and a lot of the time it doesn't work. And so basically they're trying to make it easier, which I think is great news. So they're going to start testing that next year, which will be a really cool development. Do you want to go with your first?
Who's your minus?
Okay, yeah, I'll do my minus.
You do your minus first, and then, like I said, we're still working out the kinks, folks. This is we'll fix the rest of the OTA update later. So who's your minus?
Yeah, my who's down is Tesla Cybertruck. There was really good reporting out of Business Insider recently that basically said that Tesla had told some of the workers on its Cybertruck line to stay home for a few days, which, to us means there are not enough of them. There are too many Cybertrucks being made and not enough buyers for them, which is kind of a problem when the Cybertruck has only been out for like a year, almost exactly. I think a lot of industry watchers never thought that it would achieve the kind of volumes that Tesla said it would. Like Tesla was like, this is our best vehicle ever. We're going to sell 250,000 of them a year, which is a lot for a vehicle, especially like a really weird, really expensive one. And
I thought it was going to displace the Ford F-150. Like it's going to put the F-150 out of business. Like, sure, man. Like the only thing that does that is like the apocalypse.
Yeah, exactly. It's like a meteor.
And even then,
yeah, no, exactly. Like yeah, all the Tesla fans and were like, this is gonna ruin the F-150 or the F Series, and like they sell almost like, I don't know, 1 million of those a year, like close to it. So Cybertruck, apparently the hype is fading, the demand is fading a little bit. So why don't you go, Patrick? Why don't you start with your plus?
My plus, goodness, the Honda Prologue, which I'm driving as a press tester right now. This is kind of like the big surprise in the EV world of 2024. It's like people love this damn thing. It's selling like crazy. They sold 6,000 of them in November alone, which is more than a lot of car companies have like sold like year to date period. It's doing really well. And it's we could go into it more the next episode because I'm testing it more and I want to write a review of it on InsideEVs soon. But like it is the Honda sort of reskin of a General Motors EV platform. They kind of put a few unique little Honda touches on it. But like it's the range is good, the charging's pretty good, it drives pretty good, it's incredibly normal. And that's what people want. And they want EVs from like brands they know and trust and have good dealer networks like Honda does. Like that's a surprise hit. My minus, unfortunately, General Motors, which is getting hit so hard in China, it just announced a $5 billion write-down to restructure its China business this year. That's like a third of GM's like total profits last year. Like this is a major hit, and it shows you that like this China stuff is becoming like a catastrophic problem for these car companies. And we'll see how if they could ever recover market share in that country. But like, man, that's a hit. So
it's like not only is the reskinned Chevy Blazer from Honda doing extremely well, they also had to write down $5 billion in China. Not a good week.
Yeah, but they've had a great year otherwise.
For sure.
You'll be hearing more about that on the site soon too. But I think that's it for now, man. I want to thank everyone for listening to this show. We appreciate everybody tuning in to the Plugged In podcast from Inside EVs. We'll be back next Friday for a fresh take on this week's EV news. Today's episode is produced by Michael Perkins and brought to you by the Motorsport Network.
Make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcast and leave us a review. It'll really help us out. And if you liked what you heard, you can find us on your favorite social media platform or check out our latest coverage on InsideEVs.com. See you next time.